Chapter 9. The Brigadier had tried no less than 12 times to get through to the mortuary, and had eventually been told by the operator, having said that he'd been trying for nearly 40 minutes, which was stretching the truth by a factor of 4, that the line was engaged, speaking. Driven as much by his frustration as his concern for the doctor, he had decided to go straight there in the doctor's car. After all, it was only a matter of 10 minutes away. Now, as he was hurrying down the bare corridor of gloss-painted brick, he was guided by the sound of a powerful baritone voice singing, only slightly out of tune. "I wish you all a last goodbye," which did nothing to allay his anxiety. Pushing open the door after a perfunctory knock, he was greeted by the sight of the singer in question, with a knife in his hand which was about to be plunged into the neck of a clearly unregenerated doctor. "Stop!" he cried. The concert came to an end. The soloist lowered the knife, looking up in mild irritation. "Who are you, sir? What do you think you're doing?" The Brigadier took a deep breath. It had been a damned close-run thing. "The name's Lethbridge Stewart," he said. "Ah, yes. You're in charge of the investigation into the Heath case. You'll forgive me if I don't shake hands." "You're Dr. Willow?" "It's Professor Willow," one of his companions said in a worried manner. "Oh, I'm sorry." "For my sins," said the professor. "The chair of forensic pathology. But you can call me doctor if you like. I'd answer to Rover if you offered me a bone." Looking down at the doctor, he added, "Speaking of bones, we have a most interesting case here. Every bone intact. Yet he is reputed to have fallen from the top of a high tower." "Indeed he did. I saw him fall." "Really? He's still as dead as last Sunday's joint, though. We're just about to take a look at his innards." He raised the knife again. "No," said the Brigadier. "Not squeamish, are you?" No, of course not. It's just that I happen to know the doctor, and, well, it's just possible that—" Good grief. How could he possibly explain? "You see, there was at least one other occasion when he had been given up for dead." The professor looked at him sceptically. "If you're suggesting that there's the remotest chance of reviving this man, I can assure you that you're mistaken. Spontaneous remission of death is somewhat rare in my experience." Saying which, he placed the point of his knife on the skin of the doctor's throat and— "Ouch!" said the doctor. "Oh, my God," said Brian Preble. "You see?" said the Brigadier. Tom said nothing. His mouth hung open slackly, and his eyes were very wide. Professor Willow had not moved. Staring unbelievingly at the unruly corpse, he tentatively made another small jab with his knife. The doctor squinted down at it. "Would you be so kind as to take that a little further away?" he said. "You'll do me a mischief. Thank you." "But you were dead," said Willow. "No question of it. You were dead as—" "Last Sunday's joint? Yes, I heard you say that. Well, clearly I'm not now." The doctor sat up. "Ah, Lethbridge Stewart. Do you think you could find my clothes? It's a trifle parky in here." Like many before her, Sarah had found some relief from having to face the unfaceable by plunging into her work. But Clorinda was proving hard to convince that the experiences of the morning could provide the material for a piece in Metropolitan. "No, Sarah dear, it's all rubbish," she said, pushing aside a stray tendril of her fashionably untidy Titian hair, nay mousse. "I mean to say, Atlantis," she went on, "alien monsters roaming around Hampstead Heath. I'm not the editor of a Sunday tabloid, you know." "Of course you're not," replied Sarah, wheedling. "You're the dearest, sweetest, cleverest, loveliest editor of the best glossy on the market." "You noticed," said Clorinda, unmoved. It would be a sort of, I don't know, a sort of tribute to the unknown genius in our midst. Who was this man? All that stuff. If he's unknown, why should anybody be interested in him? Said Clorinda unanswerably. But Sarah tried to find an answer. It wasn't the first time she had had to persuade her hard-headed boss to change her mind. Well, she said, getting out of her stark, more modern even than postmodern, chair, which was really rather tough on the bottom bones, and walking over to the window to seek inspiration. You could... Jeremy came in. I say! She flapped a shut up at him, and continued desperately. You could... She looked across at the hideous construction going up on the other side of the road, the latest glitzy tourist trap to disfigure the West End. You could link it with environmental pollution, the destruction of our heritage and all, the disgrace of building a theme park on London's historic Hampstead Heath. I say, said Jeremy. In a minute, said Sarah, taking in Clorinda's impassive face. You could use the shots of the crab-clawed camellias to sauce it up a bit, she concluded lamely. But that's just it, said Jeremy. There aren't any. What? There aren't any shots of the crab-faced what's-it. I just got the contacts back from Anthony. Waste of a film, he says. Clorinda picked up her camera, which was lying on her desk. Oh, Sarah, did you forget to take the lens cap off? But Sarah was gazing incredulously at the sheet of prints. They couldn't be hers, she thought. He must have got them mixed up. And yet, the ones of the outside of the pavilion were okay, and they were on the same film. But the ones she had taken inside didn't even show the desert, let alone the camellias. There was nothing to be seen but bare walls. This was more than strange. It was impossible. The Brigadier needed to know about this. He should be back at Unit HQ by now. Unless he'd gone home. May I use your phone, Clorinda? She said. The doctor put on his jacket. You're right, Brigadier, he said. Much higher, and last Sunday's mutton could easily have become next Sunday's lamb. You could be talking to a new version at this very minute. He looked in the mirror on the wall and ran his fingers through his hair. Though not necessarily an improved version, he added, pushing at his face as if to make sure it was still the same one he had woken up with in the morning. No, he hadn't changed, thought the Brigadier with an inward smile. Lord knows why you weren't killed, though, he said. The door of the little office lent to the doctor's dressing room swung open. Tom's made us all a cup of tea, said the Professor. I'm afraid we don't run to anything stronger. Okay if I make a quick phone call, Prof? Asked Tom as he left the room. Nectar, said the doctor, sipping his tea. I sometimes think I only stay on this planet for the tea. Nothing like a good cuppa. A chap in India got me hooked. Name of Clive. General Clive, said the Brigadier doubtfully. That's the fellow. A thoroughgoing bad lot, but he knew his tea. He took another sip and continued. The reason I wasn't killed, Brigadier, was that I used a technique I learned a few years ago from a wise old Neanderthal. A gulp of tea. Well, not as wise as all that, perhaps. They were a relatively dim lot, but they certainly knew how to fall down cliffs. A simple matter of bone relaxation, do you see? Bone relaxation, said Professor Willow, who had been listening with a settled look of disbelief on his face. Well, that's right. As you know, muscle relaxation can save you some nasty bruises if you, say, slip on a banana skin. Well, if you find yourself falling from a great height, bone relaxation can be just the ticket. But that's physiological nonsense. A colloquial shorthand. More strictly speaking, it is analogous to the breakdown and regeneration of larval tissue in the formation of a pupa. The Professor could take it no longer. He put his mug down with a bang. I have never listened to such unmitigated poppycock in all my born days. I don't know who you are, sir, but I can tell you what you are. You are a charlatan, sir, a pseudo." The doctor eyed him coldly. "And if I knew who you were, sir, I might be able to decide what you are." The brigadier leapt in. "I'm so sorry. This is Professor Willow. This is the doctor, Professor, my scientific advisor." The doctor's face cleared. "Professor Mortimer Willow, who wrote that paper on the post-mortem agglutination of red blood cells in victims of carbon monoxide asphyxiation?" "The same," the professor said suspiciously. "I'm very pleased to meet you, sir. An excellent piece of work." "Thank you," answered the professor, a little stiffly. "I quite agree." The brigadier looked from one to the other and decided to give a little help to the budding rapprochement. "What's more to the point, Doctor, is that it was Professor Willow who wrote the post-mortem report on the victim of the attack on Hampstead Heath." This did the trick. The two scientists were soon in deep consultation and mutual agreement on the unaccountable nature of the injuries inflicted on the body in question. "And do you have it here?" asked the doctor eagerly. "You were in the fridge with him." "Any chance of a quick glance?" As they walked back down the corridor, Tom, looking up from the phone more puzzled than ever, said, "Sorry, Prof." He followed them into the room, but not before the brigadier had heard the end of a conversation of apparently terminal nature, culminating in an angry, "Well, I'm sorry," and a noisy clatter as the receiver was banged home. "Sorry," Tom said again, at the professor's over-polite request for his assistance. "If you ask me," he said, pulling out the appropriate drawer, "I was better off with Imogen." "You can see for yourself," said Willow, as they gazed down at the pitiful horror which had been Nobby, it said on his label a Bartholomew Clark. "The marks of the teeth and the tearing of the flesh are extremely atypical." The brigadier, for all his experience in battle, and indeed the bloodier aspects of his unit job, found the sight extremely disturbing, reminiscent of a butcher's stall in an eastern street market. "What's more," continued the professor, "since the preliminary report, I have found even more reason for puzzlement. I have analysed the traces of saliva on the deceased's clothes, what was left of them, and of all things, it turned out to be acidic." "So," thought the brigadier, "what had that got to do with anything?" The doctor, however, was of a different opinion. "Acidic," he said with great satisfaction. "Then that settles it. The creature who perpetrated this horror is not of this planet. We have our proof." "Typical. There's still nothing to connect Freet and his friends with the attack, Doctor, and that's what we need." The doctor was scornful. "You have the mind of a 6 and 8 penny lawyer, Lethbridge Stewart. It's good enough for me." So they were no better off. But the doctor hadn't finished. "Stop!" he said, as Dr. Preble started to close the drawer, Tom having disappeared again. "What is it?" asked the professor. "There's a hair." "Where?" "There, man, there, as plain as the nose on your face, under the nail of the second digit of the left hand." Brian Preble flushed. "There can't be," he said. "I collected scrapings from every fingernail. It's standard procedure. There were no hairs. In fact, there were no fibres of any kind." The three doctors were bent over the body, peering at its hand. The brigadier tried to get a glimpse between their heads. He was blowed if he could see any hair. "See for yourself. It's nearly 0.5 millimetre long." "Well, don't just stand there, Willow. Get me a microscope slide and some tweezers. Jump to it." Appalled such lèse-majesty, Preble jumped to it instead. "Sticking out a mile," said the doctor, carefully retrieving it. "I can't think how you came to miss it, the two of you. If you want to get on in this profession—" His voice trailed off in concentration. "Don't mind the doctor, Professor Willow," said the brigadier. "He's apt to get a little excited." The professor smiled. "Please don't apologise. It's getting on for 35 years since anybody treated me like a backward student. I find it strangely exhilarating. The doctor was soon peering down the powerful microscope and grunting as he adjusted the focus. "Aha!" he cried. "What is it?"
"Take a look."
Murmured the professor. "How very strange. The cuticle is, but on the other hand..." He stood up. "It is clearly a hair of animal origin, but no ordinary hair. I have certainly never seen anything of the sort before. What is without doubt is that this did not come from a mammal. And if he wasn't attacked by a mammal, what in heaven's name did attack him?"